Okay, the test procedure, this will be done at the entire table, so you'll divvy up each test. Ideally, if there are 4 people at your table, each person will do 1 test. I'm going to go over all 4 so you can figure out what you're going to do. Test 1 is the test for simple carbohydrates, and it involves Benedict's solution. So what you're going to do, you will get, the first thing you'll do, each group will get their test tube rack with 4 test tubes, and they will go get the appropriate sample, A, B, C, or D. They will fill each of the 4 test tubes with about 1 milliliter of that sample. Now, 1 milliliter is if you take 2 fingers side by side from the bottom up, it's about that tall, or roughly 20 to 30 drops from the eyedropper. But I would use the 2-finger test, and it doesn't have to be exact. But I would make sure you fill each one of 4 tubes with the same sample, and then you're ready to go. For test 1, let's use test tube 1 and only test tube 1. And what you'll do with this is you'll take your 1 milliliter of sample, you'll take your Benedict's solution, which is to test for simple sugar. Open it carefully, squeeze the pipette, get approximately 20 drops, add them to your sample. It only takes about 5 at a time. So add your 20 drops, 5 more. Okay. Swirl it carefully, and then for this one it must be heat activated. So take it and carefully put it in your hot water bath without burning yourself. Now they should just sit in there without water getting in the top of the tube. If it's a risk of getting water in the top of the tube, then you may want to take the test tube forceps or clamps that you're going to use to retrieve it. Go ahead and clamp it on it and let it sit at the side like that, and you may leave it in there like that. That stays there on heat for 6 minutes. At the end of 6 minutes, take it out, swirl it, and look for any type of color change or texture change. A positive result would be either a color, a texture, or both, the change. When you're all done with this, you can dump it down the sink, rinse it with lots of water in the sink and in the test tube, and then make sure it's not too hot to the touch. If it is, just let it sit to cool. But flip it and let it dry out for the next group. That's test number 1 for simple sugars. Test number 2 is for complex sugars. It's a little bit easier. You'll take the second test tube with the appropriate sample, again, about 1 ml, 2 fingers. You'll take the IKI, which is potassium iodine or iodine, and you only need to add 2 drops. So squeeze the pipette. 1, 2 drops. Put that back down, close it up. Swirl your sample and look for a color change different than the iodine. A purple or black color change would be a positive test. Again, this test is for carbohydrates or complex sugars. When you're done, the test can be rinsed out in the sink. Make sure the test tube's all clean. If any of these test tubes don't clean out correctly, there's a test tube brush in your bin. Make sure the cap is on correctly on your bottle. Put them back in, and you're ready for test 3. Now, test 3 is going to test for protein, and you're going to use Biuret. So you'll grab the 3rd test tube that also has about 1 milliliter of sample. With that one, it's very similar to the Benedict's reaction. You're going to take 20 drops of Biuret, roughly 20 drops of Biuret, swirl it, and again, it needs to be heat activated. So take this one, put it in the hot water bath for 6 minutes. When you're ready to take it out, or if it doesn't sit correctly, go ahead and use the clamp again to keep it sitting correctly so that it doesn't fill up with water. When you're ready to take it out, use the clamp. You squeeze the clamp to be able to get it to attach to the test tube. You can then lift it, don't have to squeeze it, just lift it, and check for a color change or a texture change. A color or texture change would mean a positive test. It means you have protein. So that was the protein test. Again, when you're done, you can dump it down the sink, rinse it. If you need, there's the test tube brush in there, and place the test tube upside down so that it can dry.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are the two that need heat bath allowed to be in the water at the same time?
Most definitely, as long as they stay in their own tubes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
make sure you separate them and know which one's yours.
Yeah, just watch your water level to make sure it doesn't get too low, because we don't want to start a fire. Or that the water level isn't above the level of what the tubes are. If it is, all you need to do is get the teacher. The teacher will come over with a hot pad and will either dump some water out or add some water as needed. Okay, please don't play with the settings on the hot pad. And then the last test is the easiest test. For the last test, you're going to take a piece of paper bag. You're going to take your 4th test tube, and you're just going to put a drop, just 1 drop. I may even give you a pipette for this. But, okay, that was more than 1 drop. But you really only need 1 drop, and you can slosh it around a little bit, or you could use your fingers if you're not afraid. It's just food product, so it's not a big deal. And then let it dry. When it dries, if it dries and it doesn't even look like it was wet or leaves very little of a residue, then there's no fat. If when it dries, it changes its color and leaves a grease stain or a stain, that shows that there was fat present. So that's the best way that we have, the safest way to do a fat test. So that one will take a little bit to dry. Just sit it to the side and give it some time. And that's the end of the 4 tests.